Here's exactly how you could buy your first Airbnb property with just $50,000, even in today's market. I'll walk you through exactly what to do step by step so you don't waste money or time guessing. All right, so jumping in, number one, first thing you absolutely have to do is talk with a lender. If you're looking to buy your deal with just $50,000, it's going to be absolutely crucial that you qualify for a low down payment. So if you go with a personal loan that is a vacation home loan, there's lenders out there that'll do 10% down on that. We've got special lenders who will go all the way down to 5% in some cases, but 10% is kind of the standard there. But ultimately connecting with a lender, seeing, hey, can you qualify me? What is the absolute minimum down payment? What are the states that you are licensed in? And figuring all of that out and getting pre-approved with one of those lenders is by far the first thing that you got to do. Second thing from there is going to be knowing your numbers, right? So once you are pre-approved, we kind of have to backtrack our way in to the most that we could spend on the down payment. Because as a general rule of thumb, if you're starting with 50 grand, I'm not going to want to put, more than 20 to 25,000 into the down payment alone. And that's going to leave you 25 to 30K for your post-closing setup and your design and your furniture and your amenities. All right, so understanding the numbers is going to be important. And then from there, we can set our purchase price. So if you're approved for a 5% down payment, then the max purchase price that you're going to want to go is going to be $500,000. Right? If you get the 10% down payment, then we're not going to want to push that much more than 250 or 300 because we do need to leave money set aside post-closing for the other expenses. And this is going to be key here because now we've kind of backtracked our way into, hey, what are the right potential markets that we can invest in? For example, if the average price point in a market is 700,000, that's going to rule you out, just based off of kind of the down payment, and loan type that we're qualifying for. So, from there, we can kind of set a max purchase price, and then we can go into the potential markets and say, hey, if I can spend up to $350,000, what are the highest potential markets that we could do a good deal that's not going to exceed that mark. All right, and then that brings us into choosing the right market. Now, when it comes to the types of markets, you've got three different types. You've got urban markets, you've got vacation markets, and then you've got what I would call a weekend getaway market. Those are like your cabins and your lake homes. And when starting with $50,000, I think urban is likely the best route for you to go, just because in order to really exceed and compete in that top 10, top 20% of vacation markets and weekend getaway markets, a lot of times the price point's going to be higher. But then more importantly, the design and the amenities just really need to be on point. But you can get into a lot of urban markets for price points in that $200,000 to $400,000 range. And just a high quality, good, thoughtful design can be enough to put you in that top 10% in some of these markets here. All right. And then specifically within urban markets, what I would be looking for is properties that have sat for a while. All right. And we want to do this because, when we talk about getting into writing offers, we're going to need the seller to pay your closing costs. That's for sure. Because again, when we're trying to get in with $50,000, we need to save every last dime, to go into that furniture and that design after your down payment. And then another thing that I would be looking for too is getting a 10-day inspection period. All right. Because, what we're going to need to do here is not only get a good inspection on the property, but we're also going to need to handle the repairs the right way. Because just buying a deal and setting up your furniture budget to equal you $50,000 or less is great. But what if you have $10,000 or $15,000 worth of repairs that don't get negotiated properly prior to closing? Now we've blown our budget. So with that 10-day inspection period, that's going to be enough to get an inspection, but then also get a contractor in there to quote any repairs that are needed. If it needs some roof repairs, or if you're buying a place with a pool, it might need a new pump or HVAC, issues, whatever it might be. We need all the major items addressed or accounted for prior to closing. But my favorite way to do it is, let's figure out what's wrong with the inspection. Let's get the contractor to quote it. Let's say you need a new air conditioner and a roof repair. It's going to cost a total of $6,000. My favorite way would be for the seller to deposit that money at closing in an escrow account with the title company. And then from there, let the title company pay out the contractor once the work is done. Because this way we can guarantee that it's done by a good contractor that we could have sourced on the front end. And it guarantees that the seller is going to pay for it. Okay. And this is key because if the seller is already paying all of your closing costs, there's likely not going to be any more of a credit that they can give you at closing because your lender is going to cap how much they can pay. And for simple terms, they can't really pay more than your closing cost. All right. But what they can do, and a lot of realtors even don't know this. So the realtor might tell you otherwise, but we're going to push back on it. Is the seller is able to deposit that funds into a escrow account. Title company will release those funds to the contractor when the work is done. And by doing it this way, again, this is the, I would say, safest way to make sure all of the major items on your inspection report get addressed by a good contractor and, good quality work. All right. So from there, once the property is closed on, at that point, we can start the furniture process. And, we are going to need to optimize this process as well. Really, to do a deal with $50,000, you need to optimize every part of the process. But how we do this for the furnishing is, number one, you could be intentional, I guess, from the get-go on looking for a place that is already furnished and already run as an Airbnb. And then even if we have to overhaul the property, we can at least absorb, their mattresses and their sheets and their towels and their cups and their bowls and their silverware and, a lot of that, small stuff. And then we could just come in with the big stuff, maybe painting the walls and doing wallpaper and adding a hot tub and a fire pit and a game room, things like that. So that's number one, but you kind of got to be careful of that because most of the time, no one really sells a good Airbnb because there could be something wrong with it. So we got to do some double checking if that's the case. But I bought multiple properties that were already running as Airbnbs and saved money this way. Another thing to keep in mind is optimizing your design process. And primarily what I look for with this is within your design, there's two things that will make it up. One of them is all of the ROI related design items, meaning you spend money on those and they will make you money back within your listings and more bookings. The other set is your non-ROI related items. These are things that it does not matter what you buy, your spoons, your silverware, your forks, your cups, your coffee maker. Doesn't matter what kind of spoons you got, it will not make you more money. So the way that I optimize this is I am willing to pay a designer for professional help on my ROI related items. I want my designer to design my game room. I want them to pick my wall colors, my accent walls, whether it's wallpaper or paint. I want them to pick my curtain colors. I want them to pick my couches and my headboards and probably my dressers and my rugs. But again, I don't need them to pick my sheets and my towels and my Keurig coffee maker and my bowls and stuff. So I've got a furniture list that I built that I use for the same exact setup on every single property, on all the non-ROI related items. That way I only need to pay a professional designer for the things that will 100% make me more money. And then also within this here is when we're picking that furniture, and we can mention this to the designer, but this also requires kind of double checking things even after we've gotten our design, is we need quality furniture, but not luxury furniture. And what I mean by this is, that $800 sectional couch is likely, not going to make you any more money than a $3,000, sectional couch. So, any of those bigger ticket items, the couch, the dining room table, even some of the headboards and some of the rugs, the dressers, those can be shopped, right? So when I get my shopping list, if I see something that kind of looks, abnormally high, I'll shop that around, see if I can find it for a cheaper price. So that there is ultimately what we can do to save on furniture. And then lastly here is if you've got the ability to do the setup yourself, right? If you've got the ability to fly out and oversee the setup and, maybe utilize Facebook Marketplace, I'll do that again for my sectionals, my outdoor patio furniture, my dining room table, my appliances, my washer dryer. A lot of my arcades for my game rooms, I will also get from Facebook Marketplace. So if you work remote or you've got some flexibility, to take your family or take yourself out to the property and just stay there for a week or two as your packages start to arrive, you can set things up and save. But you can also shop around on Facebook Marketplace and a lot of times find deals. All right. Also, if you're getting any work done to the property, painting, landscaping, pool repairs, things like that, you being local to the property is going to allow you to shop around with some more contractors, and they'll probably take you more seriously too if you're at the property. So more will probably show up to bid the job to begin with. So being out at the property is certainly going to help you optimize this process and save during the setup. So if you've got $50,000 saved and you're serious about buying your first Airbnb, hopefully those tips will help you on how you can optimize the process and actually make it possible with that entry-level budget. But if you still feel like you'd be wasting time or guessing through the process, we can walk you through everything, all the way from finding you a deal to making sure everything gets set up correctly. And then we can even co-host with you for 60 days after we go live, just to make sure you're off on the right foot on your hosting journey. So if you want help buying your first profitable Airbnb with a budget of $50,000, there's a link in the description below. Feel free to book that free deal planning call, and we'll talk through your goals. And if we think we can help you, we can let you know exactly what we think it would look like to team up together on your deal. So if you're interested in learning more about that, just book that free deal planning call below, and we look forward to connecting with you.